Welcome back, troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Today we have a Fender Japan limited edition exclusive guitar that you cannot buy here in the United States. So what kind of ramped up this review for me is a bunch of US sites were starting to report these, you know, like Guitar World, Guitar.com, all of those ones. And we're talking about the MIYAVI Telecaster. Now, for most American viewers, that doesn't mean much. But then you look up this guy and you go, oh man, can he play? He's got a very unique style to him. Very percussive. I'm not even sure if he uses a pick all the time. But this is one of the craziest Telecasters that Fender has made as a limited edition artist guitar for somebody in quite some time. But it's also extremely expensive. I don't think we'll ever see more than just a couple of these getting imported to the US because these things at the store, they're 225,000 yen. So roughly 2,250 USD. But since this is made in Japan, you're also hit with an import duty and tax of about 10%. So that raises your price about 225 bucks. And then shipping costs are just outlandish anymore due to the whole pandemic and everything. So all said and done, this thing cost me just slightly under $3,000. And it comes in a gig bag. Oh man, I was a little bit worried if I'd be able to sell this one afterwards. Thankfully, a lot more people know about this thing, so I think this video should do us pretty good. Because in the grand scheme of things, even though this is kind of a crazy Tele, rather a basic looking guitar, what makes this expensive is the name and all the crazy stuff that's on this. So you're actually paying for some interesting stuff here, and it's going to take a while to go over this. So here we go, MIYAVI Telecaster. First impressions, I am so happy everything is a gloss finish. I thought for sure it'd all be satin and you're like paying this big premium for like something that feels basic, but this feels high quality. It looks high quality. Man, those frets look fantastic straight out of the box. I wonder if, did they put stainless steel frets on here? I don't think they went that crazy, but we'll have to look at the spec sheets. But we've got a Seymour Duncan humbucker in the bridge. We've got a Pure Vintage 65 in the middle, and then, what? Where's my screws? I'm not sure if those are supposed to be there or not. But it's got a sustainer pickup, so that's what this stuff has got going on, just like the EOB Strat. But if that was not crazy enough, this has a trem bar on it. So you get all the spanky Telecaster tones, but you can also have a trem, and it still looks fairly traditional. And the trem bar itself is kind of interesting. I'll have to see if I can find it. This is the one thing I love about Fender Japan. Their warranty thing is just a giant pick. But here we go. Here's what the bar looks like. It's kind of interesting how it's threaded. So the threads are in the middle. So something like this, or if you want it to sit lower, you can just really crank it down here. I mean, do whatever you want with this. That feels so strange to do on a Telecaster. Now you might say, why not just get a Strat? Because that's kind of what this is the Ed O'Brien Stratocaster, but in Telecaster format. You can definitely do that, but you don't have a made in Japan limited edition thing. Yeah, this is interesting. So I think we need to throw this guy on the workbench to take an individual look at its parts and specs to see how they shoved all this stuff in here, because let's face it, you can watch MIYAVI rock this thing out. I'll try my best to do some sort of a demo, but you're here to watch this video because you want to know the inside stuff. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and throw this thing on the workbench and take an individual look at its parts and specs. Inside the MIYAVI Telecaster, oh boy, we've got a whole bunch of stuff to look at here. So starting things off, we get the Fernandez Sustainer driver. Now what's strange, in the Ed O'Brien Stratocaster, they called this a humbucker. It was an HSH setup, but for this one they're calling it HSS, so maybe this is a different model or it's voiced differently. Just something I noticed within the spec sheets. But here's what the backside of that looks like. You just got a couple of wires going out, and there's nothing too fancy within our pickup cavities in any of these. They're just covered over in white, but it seems like such a strange thing to route the pickguard for those screws and then not actually use them, because that thing mounts directly into the body. I figured out what the holes are for. They leave them there because if you have a very skinny screwdriver, you can adjust the height of the pickup without taking the pickguard off. That's actually kind of ingenious. The problem is most of my screwdrivers don't actually fit, but my Gibson multi-tool just happens to be able to slink in there. But the way that this sustainer works is you utilize these guys. So you got a 2-position one right here, that's your on and off, and then you have 3 different positions that you can choose from here, being fundamental, harmonic, and the blend positioning. Now, I'm not a big sustainer guy, I don't really know what I'm doing. I struggled on the Ed O'Brien Strat, I doubt this one will be much different. But that utilizes this giant PCB, and what's nice about this being on the Telecaster is they can hide it in the body right there. Unlike on that Stratocaster where it's kind of, you know, all chewed up on the back. This actually looks pretty darn clean, and it's right where you want them. They're really easy to get to, right in line with all your other electronics here. But then for our middle pickup, we actually have a Pure Vintage 65 Stratocaster middle pickup. I've always been a huge fan of the Pure Vintage 65 series of pickups, so I'm looking forward to that. And then this is a Seymour Duncan Little 59. So it's a humbucker hidden within a single coil route, essentially. And here's what its cavity looks like. Nothing too crazy. And if you're curious how this compares to the EOB, I'm sorry I keep bringing it up, but they are very similar guitars. They have the same pretty much layout here. But the EOB had a Texas Special custom shop pickup in the middle, and they utilized the JB Jr. If you own the EOB and you love it, maybe check this thing out because it is going to be different enough. But what you're probably most curious about is this whole Trem system on here. I had somebody ask me to slowly explain how this thing works. This is called the Maverick Super Vee. How they get away with using the Fender Custom Shop logo underneath their name, I don't know. So essentially, it's like a regular Tele style bridge right here. So you got the whole plate, it's got that whole sustain thing that the Teles are known for, it's gonna have the bite. And it secures by using 4 screws right here. Everything else here actually attaches this to the trem block. So it's kind of like a Stratocaster back here. So that's where the trem goes, and those are the 3 securing screws. You can see those guys over here, because you're gonna notice we also have brass compensated saddles. Now, if you want a Maverick one to be kind of more Stratocaster in style, have 6 individual saddles, they also sell those on their site. But essentially, once it's mounted to the body, once you got that all back on here in your saddles, it's kind of like those old Gibson Vibrola systems. They just have this flexible part right here that you can bend up and go back down a little bit as well. It's a slightly floating trem. I mean, you're not going to go crazy up, but you can get like maybe an 1/8 or 1/4 of a tone. Whereas you can do all the dive bombs that you want with this setup. And so far, I was liking it. I thought it worked pretty well. But we'll continue on to the back once we get to the back side of this instrument. Let's check out the electronics here. Looks like we get high quality 250K CTS pots here with a very nice capacitor. That's usually the one downfall to made in Japan guitars, because the quality control is usually really good. The woods they select, they're pretty nice. The Fender skimps out on the electronics sometimes. So it's nice to see all high-end electronics in here, all really nice pots. It looks like a nice selector switch, nice colored wires, so if anything goes wrong, it'd be easy to fix. But you're gonna notice, this is kind of like one of those Nashville-style Teles. It's not just 2 pickups, so this is not just a 3 pickup selector, it's 5. Now, if I was Miyavi, I would have had them move this just a hair down, so I could just have a little bit more room. That's always my one gripe with Telecasters, especially on a 5-way switch. So I know what you guys are thinking. How much is all of this electronics worth? I came up to a retail value of about $700 because your whole sustainer driver system, it was kind of hard to find the price for me, but it was $350 in a set that included everything. It also had like a cheapy humbucker with it too, so it might be a little bit cheaper if you can find it without that. A set of these pickups, 3 of them, is $150, so I estimated about $50. This pickup's about $90.
And the whole Maverick Super Trem is actually rather expensive. It's $200 just as it is, or you can buy it in a kit that has a body that's already pre-routed for it. Now you'll have to finish it and do all that other stuff, the wiring. That would only be $380. So you could likely build your own with an authentic, like, made in Japan Fender. You'd have to do some routing and other additions, or just use one of those other bodies. I would say anywhere between like $1,500 to $1,800. So if you are an American viewer and you can't get one of these rather cheaply, that's probably your best bet, other than picking up an EOB, because those things are only $11.25, brand new even. But also keep in mind, your parts caster won't hold and retain value and grow in value over the years like a Fender signature guitar typically does. But as far as the body itself, it doesn't look like it's exposed anywhere, but it's an alder body, so not too terribly difficult to get a hold of. It's a complete gloss poly finish. And then moving on to the neck, we do have a legitimate rosewood fretboard, so it's not Pau Ferro or anything. But I don't know what they did to this. These must get special attention, because they didn't say it was stainless steel frets, but the fretboard itself feels really smooth and good. It's got a great color to it. The frets are ridiculously shiny, so there must be a little bit more attention to detail with these guys, because they also get a stock bone nut from the factory. And it is a maple neck on the back, and it has a special Miyavi C neck shape. So that's not necessarily something you can perfectly duplicate onto your parts caster guitar. And they've got 21 medium jumbo frets, so that's very comfortable coming from Gibson's standpoint. But our nut width is 1.66 inches. That increases to 2.03 by the 12th. Our first fret neck depth, let's see what's got going on here. 0.91, and by the 12th, 0.97. So that's a fairly consistent neck. It's a little bit bigger up there. And they didn't do anything too crazy with the headstock here. It's just your basic Telecaster one with your vintage style tuners that you poke it down, wrap it around. Single string tree, and you're probably like, hey, where's your truss rod? It is under here, so you'll have to take your pick guard off to get to it, but at least they have that little channel right here, so that's not too hard to do. Now that I've got it all strung back up, let's go ahead and just take a quick look at how this thing works once again. So just like a Strat, it just bends like this, right at that middle point. So I really like this because it still looks traditional. It's not like the new Tele that has the Floyd Rose on it, where it's like, whoa! It's, you know, still traditional. Like, if you leave this bar off, nobody would be any the wiser. It'd be really cool if they could find a way to, like, put one of those covers over top of it and still be able to do it. That would look pretty fancy. But there you can see your brass saddles all back installed here. And I'll kind of show you the range of motion here. So that mixed with the sustainer, you can have a whole bunch of fun. Here's a close-up look at that bar, kind of what I was talking about earlier. Kind of looks like a lead that you plug into your guitar, and then this is that first part right there before you get into your cable. But now moving on to the back, it's nothing too crazy. There's no cover over top of it, just like before. You can see your Maverick branded block right here. It's pretty standard in style, I would say. 3 springs, magnet does not stick to the block. Then inside here is your 9-volt battery, once again for your sustainer. That's got to be my one biggest complaint about this guitar, is besides the fancy electronics, there's not much remarkable about this guitar. To be fair, it's a really blindingly white finish, so that is kind of cool. And Miyavi has been using a similar looking Telecaster, though I think his was custom shop for a couple of years now. But I'm reviewing this as a guy that really doesn't know much about Miyavi. So if you're not a huge fan of his, you might not want to pay the premium to have that. But, you know, over in Japan, you know, the intended market for these guys, of course they're gonna pay a premium for it because it's his signature guitar. As far as build quality goes on this thing though, absolutely fantastic. I did not see anything too crazy. I did go ahead and condition the fretboard just for fun, and I got a lot of black gunk off of it. Normally that comes off of the frets. Sometimes there's, you know, some debris on the fretboard, even though it doesn't look dirty. But moving up the back of the neck, this is a maple neck, gloss finish, just your standard style tuners here. Made in Japan, 2020, and these were just released at the very end of 2020. I think it was about 2 months ago when these things officially came out. And the strap buttons are just in your regular locations. They're nothing special. So how much does it weigh? It's pretty chunky, 8 pounds, 1.6 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug this thing in, and hear how it sounds.
Okay, let's go ahead and go through this thing. This is unlike any Tele you've ever heard before. I kind of did a little bit more research into his style. It appears he likes to do a lot of different drop style tunings. And by drop style, I mean just detuning the whole thing. Like right now, I'm one step below, so D to D. And he seems to mainly play with his hand without a pick, so I'm gonna try to do at least some of that to honor the artist here. So let's go ahead and hear just our bridge pickup. So remember, that's actually a humbucker. That's why it sounds ridiculously beefy. Even though we don't even have the sustainer on, it almost has like a active sound to it as well. Now we'll move on to the bridge middle position. Now just the middle. I can see why Miyavi likes this. It really does sound like an acoustic guitar, which is what he's been playing a lot, as far as what I can tell just in my little bit of research. Now let's try the neck and middle positions. Okay, now we move on just to the neck position. I'll switch over to some distortion.
Okay, so quite the crazy sounding guitar. It's like a Tele with the Strat, but really kind of noisy, but exciting at the same time. This is not like most Fenders that I've played. It is very similar to the Ed O'Brien, and that's with the sustainer off, so it must slightly affect the tone even when it is off as well, because I notice like whenever I hit this pickup, you can always hear that. It's always pretty loud there. So now we will turn this on, and there's 3 different stages to the sustainer. To turn it on, you gotta turn it towards yourself. So with it off, this is what our sustain is like. Pretty good, right? Now we turn the sustainer on. See, it just keeps going on forever. So there's 3 stages to the sustainer. I'm going to put it in layman's terms for you. When it's all the way facing you, you sustain forever. When you have it in the middle, it sustains forever, but it gets just a very slight overtone note. Then all the way down, that's like the craziest setting in general. You get an even brighter note. I don't really know what I'm doing with the sustainer, so check out Miyavi to see how he uses his. It's just kind of interesting to play with. Even without it being on, it seems to affect the tone somehow. This is a really strange Telecaster. Maybe not one for everybody, but I can definitely hear some really good tones coming out of this thing. And that whole sustainer thing is definitely a staple of Miyavi's sound when he wants to play an electric guitar like this. And now that I've, seen him sling this thing on stage, the whole signature effect of a guitar is starting to come into play. So ultimately, would I recommend this to everybody? Probably not. There's a lot of cheaper ways to get a similar sounding guitar, but if you're a huge fan of Miyavi, I can definitely see it. Once you get the Trem all set up, it's actually pretty nice. I can't say I've ran into too many Teles with something like this. So Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed checking out the Miyavi Telecaster with me today. It's not necessarily traditional, but it's got some good tones hidden within here. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.